What I wanted to talk today is about being the best you, and I'm basing this on not just my own opinions and things that I've discovered, but I have over the last year or so interviewed over 150 people for Sales Pop, and these are sales experts, experts from varying fields from across the globe, and each of them has had like very interesting things to say. So I kind of pulled it all together into this presentation about 5 things you can do to make sure that when you go on an important sales call or an important meeting of any kind, an important engagement of any kind, that you can present the best version of you. And there are 5 areas that it covers. The first is choosing how you actually turn up. The second is checking your baggage, being present, knowing your triggers, and owning your lasting impression. And as I said, this is based on some of my own ideas, some of my own research, as well as the interviews that I've done on Sales Pop. And if you haven't seen Sales Pop yet, I would encourage you, salespop.net, where there are, I've done over 150 interviews with global thought leaders. So, choosing how you turn up. This is an interesting thing that I discussed with Justin Cohen, who is an author and a speaker from South Africa. From the moment you wake up every day, right, life really conspires to mess you up. It looks to derail you, mess you up, right? Maybe you get up this morning and it's cold and you don't like the cold. Maybe the traffic is terrible. Maybe the baby was crying all the night long, whatever. There's all these things that life does to derail you if you allow it to derail you. So think about it. If you're getting up in the morning and you have a really important day ahead of you, you have to consciously put aside all the things the universe is throwing at you to try and screw you up and to try and make you unhappy from the get-go. So it's a conscious decision. It's a conscious decision to push aside anything that may negatively impact your mood. And we can't control external factors, right? You can't control the weather. You can't control the baby crying. We've all tried. You can't, right? You can't control the traffic. You can't control all these external factors. But there are actually some factors within your actual control that you can choose that affect how you're going to show up on a particular day. And when I talked to this woman, Lee Brown, in South Carolina, she actually brought up an interesting concept around social media, right? She said that when she has an important day ahead of her, an important meeting, the last thing she does, she actively does not look at her social media. And I was, why is that? And she goes, because who knows what shows up there? So say, for instance, you got your big meeting today, you go on social media, and then you see your wife's ex-boyfriend, who she happens to be friendly with on Facebook, has just bought a yacht, right? And you're not having the best year. I mean, how's that going to make you feel? Or you see, or it's the other way around, you see your husband's ex-girlfriend just bought a Ferrari and your car broke down yesterday. It's not going to put you in a great mood, right? So the chances are there are things going to show up that are going to maybe negatively impact your mood. So the best thing to do is ignore it. Ignore it. Don't check your social media. Like, keep yourself in a good space. Same as with the news today, right? You can survive a day without news, right? Because let's face it, whatever side of the political spectrum you're on, you'll find something in the news that will annoy the whatever out of you on a daily basis and probably make you angry and again, get you in a bad space. So there are things that you can't control, external factors, but there are things that you can absolutely control yourself, and that is the influences that you allow come in from the outside. So there's a piece of advice: when you get up in the morning, don't check your social media, ignore the news, and keep yourself in a positive headspace for the big event, meeting, or day, or whatever engagement the day ahead. And you can even meditate if you want. It's up to you. Okay, and there's another thing. Did you know that 70% of self-talk that on a daily basis is negative? And this has been psychologically proven in research. 70% of your self-talk every day is negative. So just think about that, right? So think about when you're going about your day, you've got some important event coming up, that 70% of the chatter inside your head is telling you negative things, and so you have to actually confront that. So you have to actually take that voice in your head and quiet it. You have to acknowledge it's there. It's telling you negative things, acknowledge it, quiet it, and then replace it. I mean, some people do that by perhaps they call somebody. Maybe you're on your way to the meeting. Maybe you call somebody who always puts you in a good mood, right? Somebody who always pumps you up. Or maybe you put on some music that always puts you in a good mood and can get you out of that. But it's one thing, it's something that you should be very aware of and acknowledge. The fact is that 70% of your self-talk is going to be negative. So you've got to flip it and really focus on the 30%. The other thing is, we all carry baggage around with us. So when you turn up for a meeting, a big sales meeting or a really important meeting, you have the choice, again, you have the choice of whether you want to check your baggage or whether you're going to carry it on, right? And we all carry baggage around with us. We all carry past experiences. We carry around, maybe things aren't going that well this year. Maybe there are, maybe last week I had a meeting that wasn't that great. Maybe 3 years ago, I actually came to this building for another meeting and it didn't go very well. So there's all this baggage. So you have to consciously make a choice. Am I going to enter this meeting carrying all this baggage with me, or am I going to consciously park it at the door and go in fresh? And again, this is a conscious decision that you can make, because we all have baggage. And we all have things, whether it's from our childhood or whether it's from our careers or whatever, negative things that it's very easy to bring in with us, and that will make us less effective and more defensive. So you have the choice to actually leave that at the door and acknowledge that you have it, because we all have it. Acknowledge it and say, I'm going to leave this at the door today, and I'm going to go in free of this baggage. And maybe the only baggage I'm going to carry on with me is positive experiences. I'm going to carry those with me and I'm going to use those to reinforce, but I'm going to leave all the negative ones checked at the door, and hopefully they won't even make it to their destination. Maybe they get lost in transit if you're lucky. And the other thing is, again, as you walk into the room, you do carry your past with you. And it's a choice of whether you decide that the negative elements of that past is prologue, so therefore it is going to dictate the outcome that you're going to have this time, or whether it's just experience. And you're carrying it in as experience to help you to be as effective as you can in the meeting, as opposed to, again, baggage that's going to hold you back, or negative experiences that you're going to say, well, this happened in the past, therefore it's going to happen again in this circumstance. So again, it's a choice to look at it as experience and help, or to look at it as something that's going to weigh you down and impact your experience negatively. And then there's being present. And I think this is one of the most important things that you can do. And nowadays it's become more and more difficult. And we see this all the time with people, because everybody's so distracted that being present has become almost a really difficult thing for a lot of people to execute on. And you may be physically present, but I mean actually cognitively engaged and in a real sense. So as we know, hearing and listening are two different things, right? You can sit there and you can hear what the other person is saying. You're in a sales meeting, you can hear what the prospect is saying, right? That's really just perception of sound. It's a physical thing. Listening is a conscious act, but active listening, the step beyond listening, is the key to success. So active listening is when you're truly engaged in what the other person is saying, and you're actually thinking about it, as opposed to, and trying to process it, as opposed to just trying to think about what am I going to say next, or what do I do next. You're actually active listening. And they use this in therapy a lot. Not that I've ever been in therapy, just saying. But they use this in therapy a lot, is this active listening, where in couples therapy, where they will get one person to speak, and before the other person gets to reply, they have to repeat back what the other person said and actually show that they understood, they actively listened and cognitively understood what the other person was trying to say, and they can't move on until the person who said it originally agrees that that's what they said. Now, I'm not saying we do that in a sales call, because that would get a bit creepy, But the fact is, in your head, you should be doing that. You should be saying, am I really understanding, and have I really listened hard to what the other person is saying? And if you need to, you just say, oh, I just want to clarify what you just said there. That way you're really engaged. Now, if you're doing that, it's hard to get distracted, because this is a discipline. So you have to actively, you have to concentrate on your active listening. It's a discipline. It's hard to get distracted. But there's lots of things there that will distract you. Sorry, there's a piece of paper. I wanted an article from Sales Pop that I wanted to quote some stats for. Did you know that people are distracted every 11 minutes on average, and interruptions make you 20% dumber? This is from Mike Schultz of the RAIN Group. And when people get disrupted, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to get back on task. And after only 20 minutes of interrupted performance, people report significantly higher stress, frustration, workload, effort, and pressure. So there's a real downside to distraction. And we have all of these things that are going, hey, look at me. You have your phone on the desk there in the meeting, and you can see there's something happening on it, and you're talking to your prospect, but there's something happening on your phone. You know, your concentration is now split. And in fact, you're probably more interested, just out of human nature, about what the heck is going on my phone here, who's texting me. So when you go into a meeting like that, the best thing you can do is switch off all of these devices and put them away, because they don't have your best interests at heart, right? They're just attention seekers, narcissistic, they're narcissists, all of these devices. They want your attention all the time. Look at me, look at me. So that's something that you should be aware of. And in fact, there's another stat that I'll just give you that's just fun. Deloitte conducted a study in 2017 that revealed people check their phones 47 times a day, and people aged 18 to 24 check their phones 86 times per day. Well, I know a lot of people who are well over 24 who could easily hit that 86 number. And I'm not pointing fingers anywhere. So again, put your devices away. When you're in a meeting with somebody, you only need to have what you need to have, right? A pen and paper. If you choose to take notes on a laptop or whatever, make sure you have switched off all the alerts, the messaging app, anything, your email, anything that could possibly distract you. Because as you saw from those stats, the reality is once distracted, it's very hard to come back. And prospects and people in meetings, they generally don't like it when you say, could you just back up about 10 minutes, because I kind of stopped listening about 10 minutes ago, all the stuff that you said. It sounds really interesting, but if you just want to repeat it all again, and I promise this time I'll listen, that generally isn't a good tactic. Taking notes does keep you focused. So whether you're old school and you take notes with a pen and paper, or whether you take it with a laptop or whatever device you want to use, as I said, make sure you switch off all the distractions on there. But it does communicate respect. So even if you are the kind of person who likes to maybe just keep things in your head or whatever, it actually communicates respect to somebody when you take notes. People expect that. If somebody comes to meet with me and we're having a conversation, I kind of expect them to take notes, because otherwise I don't know that you can keep all this stuff in your head. Maybe you can, but I don't know that. So during the meeting, I'm going to be thinking, don't seem to be that interested in what I'm saying. They haven't bothered writing anything down. And today, recording, yes, you can record things. Some people like to do that. It's still not something that's all that common. But take notes, because it communicates respect, and above all, it gives you something to summarize at the end of a meeting. So at the end of the meeting, then I can say to you, let me just look at my notes here quickly, and let me just run through what we talked about today. I just want to make sure I captured everything. Does this cover, and then go through it and say, does this cover everything? Did I miss anything? If you miss something, then you can pick it up from there. So it's a really good way of expressing respect, and also validating what the person said, and proving that you were actually listening throughout the process. And it means that when you do your follow-up later, your follow-up's going to be accurate. And the other thing is that we all have triggers. The other thing just to bear in mind, right? We all have triggers. We all have things that can set us off. And triggers, you can tell a trigger because it actually has a physical manifestation as well as a psychological one. So maybe early on in the meeting, the prospect says something that sounds negative. Maybe there's, I don't know, this sounds interesting, but I'm not sure about the price. And this triggers something in you. You're immediately on the defensive as a salesperson, and you can feel that because you physically feel something. Maybe you get a little tense, maybe you get a little warm, but there are physical as well as psychological reactions. So you can recognize triggers, and sometimes, again, triggers can be the fact that they said something that you perceived as negative, so it immediately got you to react, or they looked at you a certain way. Maybe they looked at you the way your dad used to look at you when he disapproved, and it triggers something again. You can tell a trigger because it will have a psychological reaction, but it also have a physiological one as well. And so therefore, you have to recognize when those happen, because this is often the thing that actually derails a lot of interactions, sales meetings or whatever, is when a salesperson gets triggered by something and doesn't recognize it, and then is on the defensive, or maybe gets off track in the meeting because they're not dealing with the fact that they've just been triggered by something. They're physically tense and they're completely on the defensive, and the whole meeting starts to unravel. So this is something that you really need to watch out for. So you have to have a strategy for calming yourself, because like I said, it's a psychological reaction with the physiological component. So just remember that it's in your mind and it's not reality. So you can give me a strange look, right? And I can interpret it however I want. It's in my mind. I have no way of knowing whether that's the reality or not. So you have to have a strategy for calming yourself. Remember, it's in your mind and it's not reality. And then finally, own your lasting impression. Set next step expectations, then follow through. And how you communicate after the fact can enhance or undo all your hard work. So make sure you follow up when you say you'll follow up. You follow up comprehensively. You do the things you say you're going to do. You're appreciative of the time that the person gave you. And you just own that lasting impression. So reinforce the positive all the time. And then finally surprise in a good way. What additional value can you add? What can you do maybe later on, maybe weeks after your engagement? You say, I was thinking of you and I saw this article related to your industry and something that you mentioned during the meeting, and I just wanted to share it with you. It's got nothing to do with your actual sales process, maybe nothing to do with your product, but it's communicating value, and it's communicating that you are thinking about them, and it's surprising them in a good way and making them feel that they're just not another prospect or a customer, but somebody who you appreciated actually connecting with and engaging with. So finally, just to recap, 5 ways to maximize every interaction. Choose how you turn up. Don't check your social media. Leave the news alone. You'll survive. Honestly, the world will survive without you for a day. Check your baggage at the door. Make sure any negative things you're carrying with you, that you leave them at the door. Only bring positive experiences in with you. Be present in the moment. Like, put all distractions aside. Make sure you're actively listening to the person that you're talking with and engaged fully with them. Know your triggers. Things always come up in meetings that can derail you. Recognize them. Have a calming strategy for yourself so that you can get back in, be present, and be in the moment. And finally, make sure you follow up in a positive way so you own your lasting impression.